I am struggling right now with you, Rob, because I on the one hand, I feel like that is um, fantastic advice. And I think it's a really good mental model for people to use heading into the holiday. I think it is the best advice. And I'm struck by the fact that you must have played a lot of Sims if that's if that's how you see the world now. Rob, like
Huh.
I'm experiencing some distress. All right.
Okay.
And maybe I need you to coach me, keep me off the ledge.
I thought you'd never ask.
Yeah. You got,
Yes.
so we are one day away from Thanksgiving. And then after Thanksgiving, we are rolling into the Christmas holiday. We're rolling into Hanukkah. We're rolling into a lot of events where people
Yep.
have to spend time with family.
End of year events.
I am aware that my family has arrived, or my wife's family have arrived in Denver, and I already feel myself vibrating with agitation already. And people will say, like, "Oh, we're doing X, Y, or Z with this person," and I find myself already being like, "Oh, the hell we are! No, we're not." And I find myself already being reactive. Okay,
All right.
so
Well, what? Okay. So yeah, I'm excited to go into this, and I think you and I might have just different perspectives here for a couple of reasons. One is in my family, no one really travels. Like we're all, not no one, very few people travel because we have a kind of a critical mass here in St. Louis, and so there's not a lot of traveling and people staying with others. So that's different. And I think, yeah, traveling and hosting is a whole other bag of worms as it relates to like the stress that it
mhm,
puts on people.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, but I think it's different, and I should say I am I'm ramping up the distress for the purpose of this call. I actually am pretty lucky. I love my family. We disagree politically, and we will have lots of debates related to
Yep.
politics. Well, I should say kind of. We are unable to talk about politics, so I'm hedging there. I love them. We don't agree on much.
Okay.
Okay,
Politically
and so I
speaking.
politically, yeah, politically speaking, yeah, there's I think people have baggage in the family.
Sure. Who
So,
doesn't?
what I wanna talk about today is, if I was telling you before this call, when I think about the holidays, there are, like, specific, caricatures of people that I feel like I have to interact with. Like,
Yeah.
there is going to be a family member who is, aggressive and thinks they're aggressive and arrogant, and you have to navigate their fire. And
Right.
then you have someone in the family who is super passive, they won't say anything, but they're gonna, subtly tell you that you are amoral. And then you got someone that's won't get their ass out of the kitchen and they're constantly in the way and they don't know what they're doing. They're sort of just following you around. And then you have someone who needs to be taken right. You have all these like
Uh huh.
there are these archetypes of people that you feel like you have to navigate. And
Right.
I want to today talk about how do you deal with the person that you disagree with politically? Because I know that there's a lot of energy around politics right
Yep.
now. And I can imagine a lot of people are dealing with that.
Okay.
So I've got a list of things. Let me give you my list. This is David's solution. And Rob, you give me feedback on it. Okay?
Commentary done.
Commentary on the list. Okay. Let me just say this that my in-laws are always annoyed with me. This is funny because I feel like you're the person that knows me best in this way. They think that I start a lot of shit just to see the shit get started.
Oh,
And that I don't engage in the shit, but I create the shit, and they find that very annoying.
I'm happy to fly out tomorrow and help them gain some insights and confirm their worst fears about you.
Yes, yes. So my issue is this. I think I hate when, and yeah, it sounds like your family does it, but my in-laws have adopted, because everybody's politically divided, there has been the decision to go, we're going to avoid all topics that are political.
Sure.
So uh, we're going to, I mean, I think people are going to try to go through the entire Thanksgiving holiday and never once talk about the election because it's just, you're lighting a bomb if you talk about it. So instead, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about things that are totally meaningless. And I find it so excruciatingly boring. I remember, this is a related story. My dad, we were having a debate between my brothers and I, And we're like, it's this raucous debate, and my dad keeps interrupting to ask or to show us this new tool that he bought on Amazon that could carve a watermelon differently. And he kept being like, look at this tool, you just put it right here. And I'm like,
Shiny
Dad,
object.
nobody cares about your watermelon tool.
Yeah.
Right. But he's trying to diffuse the energy in the room. I hate diffusing the energy in the room. And I really struggle to disengage if somebody is poking me. Okay,
Right.
those are my issues.
Right. So I'd say a couple things.
Yeah,
The joke I make when in our job, I can't remember if I've said this on this show or not yet, but uh, I will joke that if people weren't inherently conflict avoidant, you and I wouldn't have jobs.
yeah,
Like
right.
that's
Yeah,
2/3 of the reason that we're called in to do anything in an organization. I'm making this up. Is related to some extent to conflict avoidance.
yeah, agreed.
And so as you say that I'm a similar way. I love to have conversations with people. If they get a bit heated or something, I can get heated. I get a lot less heated now than I used to. And instead just I'll ask questions and I'll want to hear what people have to say. Um, but I've come to realize that I can separate or compartmentalize even with a family member, someone who I love but who I disagree with. I can compartmentalize that maybe easier than
Mhm,
other people can.
mhm,
And so I think that's part of it. And I can understand too as a parent, like if I think that my kids aren't going to get along and that someone's engaging in a conversation that could cause them to get further apart as opposed to
yeah,
closer together, right? I think
yeah,
at least for me as a parent, my hope is that my kids remain close throughout the duration of their life, even if they're not in the same city anymore, that they are emotionally close.
mhm,
So it
mhm.
makes sense to me as a dad to say, all right, Dave, stop.
Look at the watermelon. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. All right,
yes,
dad. Sorry, I'll look at the watermelon thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a good segue to tip number one, which I think you do very well, which is separating your identity. I don't think is tied to your your beliefs or your views. I think you believe things, and you and I can debate those things, but I don't think that you feel like you're under attack if I disagree with you. And so it's very difficult to get you emotionally distress. Like, you could be frustrated with somebody else's perspective, you could be angry with their perspective, but I don't think that the debate ever leaves you being like, David's hurt me. David disagrees with me, and then therefore I'm not safe.
Right.
And I think you're able to set a barrier between you and the discussion that's being discussed.
I think I try to do that. That is a newer thing for me, like in the past 5 years.
Mm,
I wouldn't always describe myself that way. In fact, if you talk to people who knew me in like my 20s, no, they would not
not
describe
that
me
way.
that way. No.
So what's the muscle? How do you do that? How do you separate them?
I think it's again more understanding that the person's beliefs is not necessarily descriptive or illustrative of that person overall. And that like
Hmm.
everything else, it's dynamic, it's environmental, it's caused by a lot of things that um I may not be aware of. And
Hmm.
so again, I think the training in our job has helped me immensely with some of this, which is part of
Yeah.
why I think I've adjusted my orientation to a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that that's really important.
Yeah.
Related to that is, I think.
Well, let me
Yeah.
interrupt you because I think it's easy to caricature you as someone who gets really um elevated and stuff or not elevated, emotional and
Yeah.
excitable about stuff. And I do think that you're a shit disturber on purpose, right? You do like to drop
Yeah.
bombs and just sit there and say, "All right, what's gonna happen?"
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think you're pretty similar. Like it's very easy for you to separate the person from their viewpoint.
Yes. I do think that and maybe to a fault that I do that.
Right.
And
That could be the
you know,
watch
I
out
mean,
too. Is like, well, why can't everyone else do this? Yeah.
right. I think that yeah. I mean, I think I've also gotten feedback that I'm not sensitive enough to the experiences of others, because for me, I'm like, who cares? and that can be distress. That
Yeah.
leads to some trauma.
Right.
So, yeah, that's not yeah, it's not always a good thing. But so I think the first tip would be to be very deliberate about separating yourself from your argument. Those are two
Mhm.
very separate things, and so it's true for other people. People can
Yep.
have views and perspectives. It doesn't mean that they are their views and perspectives. I think that's the first thing. Yeah.
Right. And
Yes.
maybe this is I will take off the PhD from the end of my from the end of my name at the top
Yes.
right hand corner of this show as I say this. And and then get a little if part of the reason what helps me as someone who used to get really emotionally activated is
Uh-huh.
not doing that, but then afterwards, if I go to like my wife or a friend or a cousin or something and just say and get catty for about 5 minutes,
Yeah.
that helps.
You
That releases
oh, afterwards, afterwards.
after, right? If I feel like I have to play more the mediator or the person who has to understand and I don't get activated myself, as someone who's still
Yes.
a recovering kind of overly sensitive person to the ideas of other people, that helps me a lot.
That helps me too. I wonder if there's something there because yeah, I mean, I do love to gossip. I love it.
Yeah,
So
I do too.
yeah, that's an interesting dynamic, right? So in the moment, I don't think I don't get chippy or get personally hurt. But as soon as that door closes when everybody leaves, then the gossip sesh is on.
Right.
Yes, you should give yourself the freedom. That's tip number 2. Give yourself
Yeah.
the freedom to gossip, have your person that you can gossip with after.
Right. And maybe the
And
way I'll back into this in to make myself feel better about that being one of our tips is right. It's just a way to release some of that stress after maybe a more heated conversation. Is if you can go
yeah,
back to people who have a similar belief system, at least in that particular area as you, and you can say, "Can you believe fucking Dave again?
yeah, yeah,
Jesus
yeah,
Christ, can he just shut up sometimes?" And you do that
yeah.
for a couple of minutes, and then it
Then you feel better.
can it can feel better as long as Dave doesn't continue to be an asshole.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good I hadn't thought about that, but you're 100% right. Okay, the next thing my second tip here is you have to decide with your family if you're gonna either have the debate or not. In my family, and this is the other side of my family, what happens is there's subtle digs. So no one's going to say, you voted for X and so therefore you're wrong. It'll be, if I'm cutting the turkey and I'm doing it in too careful a way, there'll be a comment that I'm cutting the turkey like a liberal. Or if I'm frying the turkey and I drop it in aggressively, then that was only a Republican could fry a turkey that way.
Oh, I love
There
that. That's
one
awesome.
time right, one time we were, killing no, we were eating lobster, and all me and my 3 brothers, had to you take the lobster and you drop it into the hot water, and the lobster's alive before you drop it into the boiling water, and my 3 brothers are just slam dunking it into the water. I mean, they are semi aroused while they kill these animals. And I am just, with great trepidation, dropping the lobster in the water. And then I got all kinds of, political assumptions about, because I was so sensitive with the lobster.
Right. Got it.
So
Well, next time, Dave, bring me to that, and there'll be no focus on you.
you will start weeping. Like Rob would be,
I I
you'd
mean,
be
I
petting
ate lobster,
lobster.
don't get me wrong, but yeah, there'd be some, there'd be a lot more than trepidation if I
Yeah.
threw a live animal into boiling water for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I do think that it's a best practice if that's happening is to say, okay, let's talk about it and then get your cards out on the table versus allowing contempt to build
Yeah.
when you're jabbing each other under the table. It's better for it to be on top of the table versus under the table.
Right, it's
You
like,
agree with that?
being passive aggressive, I think is what you're
Yes.
saying, right? And,
Yes.
I mean, I think passive aggression can be funny
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
someone who likes to jab at other people in a lighthearted way, I find that to be funny, but if it's a jab that is, coming from a not so nice place,
Right.
that's certainly not
Right.
gonna help anyone's stress level
Yeah.
if you're at a family get together
Mhm.
where everyone else wants to have just a nice time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
so
yeah.
I guess what you say is agree well, how do you agree to that? Like, what would you say? "All right, everyone, we're deciding we're not talking about politics this Thanksgiving." And then,
S-
like, so how do you do that, though? Because it feels kinda awkward or weird.
Well, so I'll just tell you how it happens. I mean, this is a point of friction with my in-laws is that has been the decree for
By
some
who?
people. For some people, that's been the decree, which I find very frustrating. So there's a couple of people who I feel like are overly sensitive as it relates to politics, and they've said no political discussion. And I'm like, I have to talk about watermelon because you can't handle talking about something real. It's a hard pill for me to
Yeah.
swallow.
Yeah.
My like father-in-law, like all it would make if nothing would make him happier than spending the entire time talking about politics. So for him, it's disengaging because now he's got to talk about things that he finds totally uninteresting, whereas his whole life revolves around politics. So like there's people that really want to talk about it, and then other people who find it too emotionally triggering and they can't talk about it.
Yeah.
And so I guess I don't have a good answer because I mean I can tell you that the right answer, if I was a better person, would be if it makes one person uncomfortable, then you should respect that person and make sure that you have a nice Thanksgiving. But that is the exact opposite of how I interact. I really struggle with I'm not a good person in that way. Like I like to push the envelope. So this would not be a tip, which
No.
the tip would be care about the person who's the most vulnerable, care about the person who's going to be the most uncomfortable. That's probably the tip, which I don't do
But
a good job.
right. And I mean, and that's a good tip, but maybe one that's more realistic is what would happen for you, Dave, if this was 2 years from now? So it wasn't at Thanksgiving, a month and a half after or a month after election day.
Hmm.
Would it be the same? Or what if this was 10 years ago and politics wasn't as big of a topic? How would you feel differently?
I think 10 years ago, I think that our it's hard for me because I feel like I'm exaggerating the dynamics in my
Sure.
family to make the point. Um, but I think what's happened is our ability to talk about important things um, has gone sideways, and
Yes.
we've not done a good job of getting to resolution
Yes.
over the years. So I don't think it has anything to do with, or has less to do with the most recent election, but it has to do with you have a decade of disagreement when you only see somebody 3 times a year.
Yeah.
And every holiday, you have this little nitpicky friction with this person, and it never gets resolved. You don't see him until the next nitpicky friction. And now, we're 10 years down the road, and all I have in my mind is 10 events where we've argued and it's not felt good.
Yep.
And so I'm like, oh God, what are we, what I mean? I think that so maybe the tip would be if you're going to have the debate, you better finish the debate. Don't start a debate, end it negatively, and then roll.
Yeah. I think that's a good tip. I think
Hmm.
what you started to say there as well is, think about the type of relationship that you want to have with this individual or these group of individuals, assuming
Hmm.
you want it to remain relatively strong. They don't do things that are going to weaken it purposefully.
Hmm.
And the
Hmm.
third thing, and this is sometimes what I'll do, is I realize that my desire to engage in some of these conversations is higher than other people. But if I'm with
Hmm.
someone who wants to talk about it, then maybe I'm not doing it at the table with 20 other people, but
Oh, it's a good point.
I'm doing it on the side with those one or two other people.
Yes. Yes.
So that's something that I've done before is all right, and not everyone here wants to talk about that. Okay. I may think that you should or you need to get over it, but me wanting you to get over it is not going to mean that you get over it.
Hmm.
And instead, how can you find time to
Hmm.
talk for 10 or 15 minutes about this thing in a way that's not gonna make everyone else upset or pissed?
I think that's a very good point. You do not have to do it at the table with 14 people watching,
Right.
right? That's a really important one. The last thing I guess there's two other things. Avoid personal attacks.
Yep.
Like you have to be aware of whether they're passive or not. If you're talking about something uncomfortable and you make a personal attack, I think it derails the entire conversation. And we have that habit. I would say, I notice it at work. I notice it with my clients. It seems like we're very comfortable recently, and this is maybe more recently with the personal attacks.
See, and that's part where I would say, I mean, I think humans as a species, right? We're great with personal attacks. About
Mhm.
about, kind of I describing a person at a very surface level like that.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and maybe people talk about it more now, maybe we see it more now. I feel like that's
Yeah.
probably no different. I have no data to back that up. It's just my perception. But I would say that's part of the reason why you don't engage in these conversations if you think you can't do it, is
Yeah.
because I have certainly seen it where it just devolves into a personal attack.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
that certainly, I've joked before. Did you ever play the game The Sims?
Yeah, a little bit, but
Okay.
not I wasn't a big Sims player, but I know the game.
Yeah, so, there would be this thing where you would build in The Sims. I played it when I was, like, in high school. You would build relationships, and then you would get, like, relationship points, and so, like, there'd be, like, these green arrows or heart signs or something, like, "Oh, the relationship is building," or there'd be, like, these red, I forget what they were, like, "Uh-oh, the relationship is suffering."
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
sometimes I think
Okay.
about that when I'm interacting with someone is this causing the relationship to grow and get stronger? Or is this causing the relationship in Sims parlance, right, to go
Yeah.
negative? Am I seeing a lot of negatives, a lot of red lights here? And so
That's a
again,
good
assuming that my
yeah.
intention is to maintain the relationship, don't do shit on purpose over extended periods of time, they're
Yes.
gonna make those red lights go on.
I am struggling right now with you, Rob, because I on the one hand, I feel like that is, um, fantastic advice, and I think it's a really good mental model for people to use heading into the holiday. I think it is the best advice, and I'm struck by the fact that you must have played a lot of Sims if that's if that's how you see the world now.
I played a good deal of Sims in the early 2000s.
Are you are you one of the people that when you are using ChatGPT that you apologize to ChatG are you like, do you
No.
feel like you're in a relationship with the AI?
I have never apologized to ChatGPT. No, I haven't done that before, but no, yeah,
Good,
Sims.
good.
I mean, Sims was a pretty popular game.
It was popular. My Allison used to play. I struggled with I don't think I have the imagination for it. I liked Grand Theft Auto,
I did like that too.
which is similar. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know that it's not similar. What
Well,
the
it's the
hell
same
is
worldview.
similar?
Is it the same worldview? Like, you're above everybody. Doesn't it look the
I
same?
mean, you're it's like a first. What do they call it? Like a first person player game or something like that. I think that's the only similarity. In The Sims, you're
Well,
going around building houses, like, building relationships with your neighbors. In Grand Theft Auto, you're, shooting prostitutes and stealing cars.
yeah. Well, you're destroying society. One, you're building
Yeah.
a society, the other
Right,
you're
there you
destroying. Alright,
okay.
okay.
I think that's a good dichotomy between the 2 of us, right? It's like,
Yes, you would be more Sims than
yeah,
and
yes,
I'm
yeah,
more
yeah, more
Grand Theft Auto.
GTA, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Um, okay, and then the last thought that I had as far as how to deal with that person is to flex when you can. I think that if you have the perspective, if you enter the interaction with empathy and compassion, and if to your point, if your goal is to make the green arrow go up, if your goal is to build the relationship, be willing to accommodate their stuff.
Yep,
People aren't perfect. They're going to have sharp edges. And it's not a good idea to be militant about every little issue.
yep,
If you can, without it hurting you, if you can flex to accommodate this person's stuff, I think you should do that. I don't
yep.
think we have to dig our heels in every single discussion.
I think I agree with you, at least conceptually. I do find sometimes, as a very empathetic person who, again, enjoys maintaining strong relationship with family members and things like that. I know one of the things I struggle with that point is it feels like it's all not it's always, but it's more on me than other people at times. Like, all right, well, this person's not going to do that. They don't have either the awareness or the
Yeah.
ability to be that empathetic, understanding person. So then
Yes.
if I want this relationship to maintain, then it's on me.
Yeah.
And that sucks
Yep.
sometimes when you feel like there's not like a 60-40, but like a 90-10 difference between your
Yep.
ability to
Hmm.
just give in, be the understanding person and go away.
Hmm.
So I agree with the tip,
Yes.
and at the same time acknowledge as someone who likes to maintain relationships that it's not always the uh the most rewarding place to be in the moment, to
Mhm.
always be the one who gets over it or who redirects or who's understanding of
Yeah.
what you might consider to be a ridiculous perspective or personality.
Mhm. I think that I think you're right, and I think to that end, I think it's also really important that when you are flexing, you're really aware of how you're emotionally handling it. You and I have talked about this a lot about work when we're looking at executives and people that have a high emotional intelligence, people that are very empathetic. Your default sort of skill set is going to be you're going to have the ability to sort of take it on the chin. You're going to have the ability to be compassionate. You're going to have the ability to accommodate.
Yeah.
I think that serves the relationship. But when you feel like you're running out of steam with that, when it's beginning to negatively affect you, you have to be able to say, "Hey, I didn't like what you said. That X, Y, or Z bothered me.
Yeah.
Don't say that again. That hey, there's a boundary there." I think the challenge is you have to be able to verbalize that before you get to a place where it's distressing.
Yep.
So I
Yep.
think that that's kinda how you can protect against it going too far is you have to force yourself to say something when it's having a negative impact,
Yep.
because
Agreed.
the dark side of that personality characteristic is you'll blow your lid eventually,
Or
right?
resentment.
And
Yeah.
and then people will go, "Holy shit, David or Rob, Mr. Empathy and nice and Mr. Calm, got really pissed out of nowhere." And you're going, "Wait a second. I've put up with 5 years of you being
Of
an
your
asshole.
shit. Yeah.
I yell one time, and now I'm the right." And it's because over those 5 years, we should have done a better job of communicating the frustration.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
I think those are
Okay,
good tips,
so
Dave.
let me summarize these tips here, okay? So we've got, um, finish if you're gonna no personal attacks, finish the conversations, make sure that over time your goal is to increase the relationship, right? Engage in green arrow behavior. Flex when you can, but verbalize it, when your boundaries are being pushed.
Yep. And
Good?
then we talked about too, if you wanna have the conversation, do it in a small group. You don't need to do it in front of
Yes.
everyone.
Yes. Small group is better.
Yep.
Perfect. All right, Rob, I will leave you to enjoy your Thanksgiving holiday. Thank you for the time.
Right
It was
back
good
at you,
talking.
Dave. Thanks everyone for listening. If you want to hear more from us, you can find us on social media channels at Shrink Space Show. You can
Mhm.
also email us ideas, feedback, other comments at shrinkspaceshow@gmail.com. Have a good holiday
Make
season,
sure
everyone.
Yes, make sure to hit that like button. That would be a good holiday present for me and Rob. Hit that like button. All right, thank you.
See ya.